Hello and welcome. If you're preparing for the IELTS speaking test between May and August 2025, then you're in the right place. Today's topic is one that comes up very often and one that you probably deal with every single day, and it's text messages. So let's break it down together with some great vocabulary, ideas, and model answers to help you get band 7, 8, or maybe even 9 in the IELTS speaking test. So let's start with vocabulary. Um, these words will help you sound more natural and more advanced in the exam. For example, instant messaging. That's real-time texting through apps like Telegram or WhatsApp, or miscommunication. That's when you or someone else doesn't understand a message clearly. And tone misinterpretation. This happens when someone takes your message the wrong way because they can't hear your voice. Um, then typo, it's a small spelling mistake in your message. We've all sent an awkward one, right? Um, and read receipts. Um, those little notifications that show that you've read the message, and if you even if you haven't replied yet. So please let me know in the comments which of these you've personally experienced. Um, Now let's look at some phrasal verbs or some more vocabulary that can be used, like predictive text, emoji, notification overload, passive-aggressive texting, and message thread. Okay, so also let's look at some phrasal verbs and idioms that you can use. Like, for example, scroll down, that's when you're browsing old messages, or get across, that's when someone just disappears. That's when you're trying to express something clearly. Lost in translation, so it's when it's misunderstood. When you text someone, ghost someone, that's when someone just disappears and stops replying. Or hit the wrong note. That's when a message sounds rude or awkward, even if you didn't mean it that way. So use these naturally in your answers, and the examiner will love your fluency. Let's practice real questions. I'll give you sample ideas and sample answers for each question. So, okay. Do you like texting is the first question. Some ideas you can say that, well, it's fast, it lets you think before replying, and you don't need to talk on the phone. Okay. So, for example, well, I text a lot on the Moscow metro. So, for instance, you could answer something like, well, actually, I do enjoy texting, primarily because it's incredibly convenient and allows for asynchronous communication. For instance, when I'm on the metro in Moscow, I can ping someone quickly without the pressure of having to respond immediately or interrupt their day. On top of that, I appreciate the ability to formulate my thoughts clearly before I send a message, which helps avoid miscommunication. Plus, let's be honest, sending a text is often less emotionally exhausting and makes a phone than, for instance, making a phone call. Or you could say something like, I prefer texting to calling, and it's just easier. So that can be your main idea. You could answer something like, well, absolutely. I find texting one of the most efficient forms of digital communication. It enables me to multitask, manage multiple conversations simultaneously, and maintain connections without having to commit to a full-on phone conversation. I particularly enjoy the flexibility it offers. You can reply at your own pace, and if needed, use emojis or voice notes to get your tone across more accurately. Then, how often do you text? How often do you send text messages? Um, well, you could say like multiple times a day, once in a blue moon, use Telegram or WhatsApp, or send memes or reminders. Depends on the schedule, um, things like that. So, if you text a lot, you could say like, I would say text constantly throughout the day, probably upwards of 50 messages, especially when I'm coordinating things with friends or classmates. In Russia, Telegram is the go-to app, and I use it not just for chatting, but for receiving class updates, booking appointments, even accessing news channels. Group chats are particularly active. It's not unusual to scroll through hundreds of messages just in one thread. Honestly, I can't imagine functioning without messaging apps anymore. Okay, if you want to say that texting is part of your daily routine, you could answer something like, I send text messages fairly frequently, whether I'm arranging meetings, responding to colleagues, or just sharing something funny with a friend. I tend to use WhatsApp or Signal, and I've noticed that my usage spikes during weekends or holidays um, when I'm more socially active. Texting, in a way, has replaced both traditional calls and emails for informal communication, which speaks volumes about how integral it has become to everyday life. All right. So then do you reply immediately? Or do you reply to messages as soon as you receive them? So you can say it depends on the sender. I try to respond quickly, but sometimes I forget, things like that. Okay, so if they're close friends, you try to reply instantly. And you can answer like it really depends on the context and the person messaging me. If it's someone important, like my supervisor or my mom, I make an effort to reply immediately. But if it's just casual chit chat in a group chat, I might delay responding or even forget entirely. Sometimes I open a message intending to reply and then get distracted. Honestly, notification overload is a real thing, and I've had to mute several chats just to stay sane. I can say I try to acknowledge messages quickly. If this is the case, you could say something like, generally speaking, I do try to respond promptly, especially if the message requires a timely response. That said, I'm also mindful of not rushing into replies, particularly when tone matters. I'd rather take a moment to reflect and craft a well thought out message than risk sounding passive, aggressive, or abrupt. I think a lot of misunderstandings stem from replying too quickly without considering how the message might come across. And one more question which has been reported recently is texting popular in your country? And you can say yes, we're very popular, or even with older people, especially Telegram or VK. So your answer could be something like, yes, texting is immensely popular in Russia. In fact, it has more or less replaced phone calls in both personal and professional contexts. Apps like Telegram and VK Messenger are absolutely ubiquitous. Even older generations have become surprisingly tech savvy, particularly during the pandemic when digital communication became a necessity. Whether it's scheduling appointments, sharing documents, or just sending memes, messaging is the default mode of communication here. If you want to say messaging is more common than calling, you can say, well, definitely, texting is by far the most widely used form of communication in my country. From school children to retirees, everyone uses some form of instant messaging app. It's fast, convenient, and non-intrusive, which makes it perfect for both social and work-related communication. I think its popularity also stems from the flexibility. You can send a message at 3 a.m. and no one expects you to reply immediately. All right. Then, do you prefer sending or receiving messages? You could mention that sending lets you stay in control, receiving feels more exciting, or it depends on the context. Then, if you want to say, I like receiving surprise messages. So, do you prefer sending or receiving messages? That's a tricky one. I'd say it depends on the situation. If I'm trying to clarify something or pass on information efficiently, I much prefer sending a message. I can control the tone, avoid typos, and make sure I'm getting my point across. But emotionally speaking, receiving a receiving a kind or thoughtful message, especially when you're having a rough day, can be incredibly uplifting. Or you could say, I generally prefer sending messages because it gives me time to carefully construct what I want to say, especially in sensitive situations. Being able to review your message before hitting send is a real advantage. However, I do appreciate receiving unexpected texts. It adds a bit of joy to the routine, and sometimes it's the perfect reminder that someone's thinking of you, right? Now, the next question is, did you text more did you send more messages when you were younger? And like texting friends all night, you were more social, now it's more practical or more selective. That's what you can mention. Now, well, you could answer something like, oh, definitely. Back in high school, messaging felt like a full-time job. I remember staying up late into the night, texting friends about everything from homework to crushes to random memes. Um, we practically lived in group chats. Nowadays, I'm more selective. I usually just send quick functional messages unless it's a close friend or something urgent. Then, or you could say something like, yeah, I used to text almost obsessively when I was a teenager. It was the main way I stayed connected to my social circle. These days, I've become more deliberate. I value my time more and try to keep conversations concise and purposeful. I still text, of course, but now it's more about quality than quantity. Then, have you ever received a confusing message? So you could mention like autocorrect fail, emojis which are unclear, or you thought it was for someone else. Yeah, something like this. Now, um, have you ever received a confusing message? So yes, it was honestly hilarious in hindsight. A friend once sent me a message that had clearly been mangled by predictive text. It read like a riddle, and I had no clue what she was trying to say. To make matters worse, she had thrown in a bunch of emojis that only added to the confusion. I had to scroll through the whole message thread just to figure out what the context was. Another way to answer this question is, well, I have, and it was a perfect example of how tone can get lost in translation. Someone messaged me with a seemingly sarcastic comment, but I couldn't tell whether they were joking or annoyed. I ended up calling them just to clarify, and it turned out they meant it as a compliment. That experience really taught me how easy it is to misinterpret tone in text-based communication. Okay, so thank you for watching. So what do you think? Which of these questions would be the easiest for you? Which vocabulary item do you want to use in your own answer? Please leave your answer in the comments and don't forget to practice out loud. And before you go, I created a free downloadable IELTS speaking ebook packed with advanced vocabulary, model answers, and ideas for the latest speaking part 1 topics, and part 2 and part 3 topics from May to August 2025. It's perfect for learners who are aiming for Band 7 and above. So you can grab it now using the link in the description. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe for more lessons every week. Thank you for watching and happy studying.